Well, good morning, good afternoon, or good evening, depending on where you're located in the world today. My name is Eliot Harper, and I'm thrilled to be presenting to you in this session. Now, we've actually had quite a few people register, so before we get started, I'd like to begin with a quick round of introductions, so each one of you can introduce yourselves. Just kidding. So we've actually had almost 1,000 registrations for the event, and I'm sure that many of you have have questions for our exclusive panel today. But to help our session flow, I'm going to be presenting on data architecture for Marketing Cloud first. Then I'm going to pose a few common Marketing Cloud architecture questions to our panel of subject matter experts, and then we're going to accept questions from attendees. So if you have a question, please enter it in the Q&A icon in your Zoom tray, and we'll do our best to answer as many questions as we can in our session today. So before we get started, I really do want to get introductions out of the way this time, and I want to give an opportunity for our panelists to introduce themselves. So I'll start. My name's Eliot, and I've been working with Salesforce Marketing Cloud, for over 10 years now, since 2013. I'm a Salesforce MVP, and more recently, just this year, inducted into the Salesforce MVP Hall of Fame. I've also written books on Salesforce Marketing Cloud, including a shameless plug for the AmScript guide, which I co-authored with Adam Spriggs. So Adam, perhaps you'd like to introduce yourself.
Hey, I'm Adam Spriggs. I'm working at Solemn as a principal architect on their global Salesforce team, and a happy participant in the developer ecosystem around Marketing Cloud in various levels. And I thank you for organizing this, Elliot, and hopefully everybody will learn some good stuff today.
Thanks, Adam. So next, let's go in order of appearance. This is actually from on the timeline of how long you've been an MVP, not intentionally, but Mateusz, would you like to say a few words?
Yeah, sure. So I'm Mateusz Dąbrowski. I am a Marketing Cloud architect at PwC, Salesforce MVP, and Marketing Champion. My main focus is implementing Marketing Cloud and Interaction Studio across the globe and sharing the learnings with the community. So that's what we are doing today.
Great, thanks, Mateusz. And finally, our newest Salesforce MVP Hall of Fame member and longtime Marketing Cloud expert. And Pato, if you can actually mention how long you've been using Marketing Cloud, because I'm pretty sure it supersedes my experience.
I think, I started, hi everyone, my name is Pato. Like Elio says, I'm the youngest MVP, and I think the youngest in this panel. I'm gonna venture to say that. I don't know if that's true, but it doesn't matter.
I'm the youngest.
I started my journey with Salesforce Marketing Cloud in 2012 during Exact Target. I like to say it was the times where we didn't have Journey Builder, and when Journey Builder came out, it was like vertical and not horizontal. Yeah, I'm a solutions consultant. I'm a software developer by trade, so I like to contribute to the community by writing tools like MC snippets. I started my own company, Devs United, in 2015, where we focus primarily on providing services around Salesforce Marketing Cloud. So.
Great. Thanks, Pato. Yes, and if you haven't checked out MC Snippets, please do. I found it an invaluable tool. And just touching on Journey Builder, I remember that too, that vertical layout. It was actually at the time called Interaction Studio. It's funny how they recycle names. We saw Interaction Studio pop up again years later as something else, which is now known obviously as Marketing Cloud Personalization. Well, let's get underway. So as I said, I'm just going to start with a 20-30 minute presentation on data architecture from Marketing Cloud. Now, data architecture can quickly get complicated. It didn't always used to be this way, but over the past 2 decades, we've seen an adoption, an explosion of voluminous or big data, which has really been fueled by the evolution of digital storage mediums. And as a result, we're seeing that data has quickly grown in variety, volume, and velocity. So this data phenomenon has enabled organizations to provide highly personalized experiences by unifying discrete customer data events across website visits and sales and customer service, what else, email engagement, and more. And so while data effectively forms the backbone of customer engagement in digital marketing platforms like Marketing Cloud, the reality is that fundamental structural choices need to be considered when integrating different data points. And a poorly considered data architecture can result in decisions which can be very costly to change later. Now, when my friends and family ask what I do, and I explain that I'm an architect, they immediately assume I build houses. Well, data architecture is essentially a metaphor. It's analogous to designing a building. It refers to that planning and disciplined processes of understanding your data and making considered decisions for managing its use. And in this session, I'm going to be sharing 6 key principles that I'd like you to consider when designing a data architecture for Marketing Cloud. And those are listed here. We're going to be covering purpose, storage, simplicity, schema, governance, and finally, security. So firstly, purpose. So the first principle you need to consider is to determine the purpose of your data source. So some marketers treat data with, I don't know, like a view of deservingness. They think, oh, you know, if this data is available, like sitting on our e-commerce system, then we're entitled to it. And so we'll just bring everything into Salesforce Marketing Cloud. And as long as Salesforce has a lenient view on data storage on the platform, which is essentially unlimited at no additional cost, then why not? Why not store everything you can forever? And I often see Marketing Cloud accounts with bloated data extensions containing every single e-commerce event or maybe every single website session that's ever been captured, when the reality is that the data is actually completely irrelevant, if not useless. So it turns out that there is really such a thing as too much data, and there are consequences of storing it. The more data you have, the greater the compliance risks, the security and privacy issues you're going to experience. And having useless data mounting up in data extensions can be time-consuming to troubleshoot and fix when processes break. Like, for example, when a query activity or import activity in Automation Studio starts timing out. So to determine the data purpose for each of your data sources, you need to craft a mission statement which details how the data is going to be used and who will use it. And these 2 things in turn will help you validate whether you actually need that data in the first place. The second principle I want to cover today is storage. So once you've established the purpose of your data, you'll need to determine how long you actually need it for. So once again, thanks to the notable absence of Marketing Cloud data storage fees, which is a policy that will change, you can expect will change in the future, platform users are quite happy to store all their data forever. And I've seen, gosh, countless examples of this. I've seen send log data extensions and landing page and journey log data extensions and sendable data extensions for past batch sends buried away out of mind, deep in nested folders, often accumulating to thousands of individual data extensions across business units. And without any performance or cost impact, there's little incentive for users to delete all this data. Well, There are a few problems with the storage philosophy. Firstly, when you have mountains of data, the chances are you won't have quick and easy access to it, as it's most likely lost in a directory and file name taxonomy, which meant something to someone a while ago, but not you. And in turn, you no longer have easy and quick access to this data, as it takes a very long time to locate it and reduces productivity. Now, secondly, and more importantly, you shouldn't keep data just because it might be useful to someone in the future. Security laws prevent you from storing data indefinitely. No, these are global regulations or regional regulations like GDPR, HIPAA, and CPRA, just to mention a few. So you need to determine why you need to store that data and identify if there are any regulatory or legal requirements for retaining it. So you can do this through establishing a data retention policy, which can easily be implemented at a data extension level, either for the complete data extension or at a record-based level. And if you really do have a valid reason to store the data perpetually, then the chances are that Marketing Cloud probably isn't the best repository for it, as data can easily be deleted or overwritten unintentionally on the platform, just at the click of a button. So you probably want to store this data in somewhere else, like a data lake or a data warehouse. The next principle I want to cover today is simplicity. Now, the most common approach to automating data processing in Marketing Cloud is by using Automation Studio, which, among other things, is a purpose-built tool for performing extract, transform, and load, or ETL operations on different data sources. But while Automation Studio is a very robust and automation platform, automations need to be designed with efficiency in mind. And regardless of the activities within an automation, every automation is essentially data-driven. Query activities and automations are really a common bottleneck, as these activities enable database administrators to literally knock themselves out and write quite inspiring, lengthy statements nested in multiple levels. So look, while long code itself isn't necessarily a problem for Salesforce Marketing Cloud, the code is typically accompanied by a level of difficulty. And when that SQL query does fail, or maybe it needs to be updated to accommodate additional fields or some other business requirement, then it can take a considerable amount of time and expertise to isolate and fix. And in turn, this loses the timeliness to the business, which can be critical in marketing. Just because you can pretty much manipulate data in every imaginable way with SQL doesn't mean you should. I say simplicity trumps complexity in efficient data architecture. Just think, do you actually need some show pony or a workhorse? And if you really think it's still necessary to write highly complex SQL statements, then you're probably using the wrong platform. Instead, consider processing your data upstream with a fit-for-purpose platform like MuleSoft for data integration or Salesforce Data Cloud for ingestion and orchestration and segmentation, data reunification. The next principle I want to cover today is schema. So a data schema is an abstract design that represents your data storage, and in the case of Marketing Cloud, in data extensions. Data extension schemas not only define data types and lengths and required fields, but they also identify relationships between data extensions. Think of a schema as a blueprint. This ensures efficient organization of your data, and is so that in turn, it makes it easy to manage and maintain. So Data extensions in Marketing Cloud essentially provide a blank canvas. Unlike standard objects in Sales Cloud, and we've got very well-considered standard fields, I've seen many ill-considered data extension schemas through things like, we'll go and set unlimited field lengths and have excessive use of primary keys because I want to go and, I want to go and search based on a field value in Contact Builder. So I'll just make everything a primary key. Even hundreds and hundreds of fields, all of which provide an unnecessary overhead. So the first step in defining a schema is to define a common vocabulary. This ensures data reuse and portability. So I encourage you to adopt a data extension and field naming convention that has context and meaning to others. Also, avoid using special characters like hyphens and spaces. As while they technically may be supported, queries and application code like server-side JavaScript need to be written differently, and it's not necessarily portable when exchanging data files to other platforms. So my recommendation is to consider preserving words within names by formatting them in what's called snake case. That's using underscores instead of space characters. You may choose just to remove characters, any space character on underscores completely, but this can often be quite hard to read, and you can get into camel case, and but snake case is one kind of popular naming format. Secondly, consider how your data sources relate to each other. Now, the best way to do this is to illustrate relationships between components in your data. And you do this by creating an entity relationship diagram or an ERD. And like a cooking show, here's one I created earlier. Now, there are many different notation approaches used in ERDs that indicate the cardinality between data entities. In this example I've created, this uses UML notation to indicate a relationship pair of either none, represented by 0, 1, or many, the asterisk, but in this case, order shipment data. So in this diagram, we can clearly see the cardinal relationships between data entities. For example, one or many suppliers can have 0 or many products. And separating your data extensions into definable entities not only enables relational data, but also makes your data much easier to retrieve and manipulate. Now, for all of these, any architects in the room, I just want to get this out of the way and to briefly get into semantics. ERDs and data schemas are not the same thing. I recognize that, they're similar, but they're different. So an ERD provides a high-level data model, and it depicts how your data is structured at a logical and visual level, whereas a relational schema focuses on a lower level, or that's using a row or tuple and a column or attribute. But if you start with an ERD to visualize your data, then you're definitely going to be off on the right foot. And after you've created your schema, please document it. A significant part of technical debt is documentation debt, which occurs when data schemas or code is created without any supporting internal documentation. And database schemas are useful long after they've been created. So clear and concise documentation helps avoid confusion and increases productivity by our team members. The next principle I want to cover today is governance. Now, governance, or data governance specifically, is a multidisciplinary process, but broadly speaking, the term refers to the discipline of planning how an organization uses data, so it's handled consistently throughout the business in order to extract value from all the information collected and stored in it. Put another way, data governance ensures that data is consistent and trustworthy and doesn't get misused. Now, proper data governance planning is essential in Marketing Cloud. But when you consider that the platform is essentially powered by data, where data is used for ingestion, decisioning, personalization, reporting, without data in Marketing Cloud, you can't do anything, right? So I encourage you to start by setting realistic and measurable goals. It's important to be measurable because you can't control what you can't measure. Now, goals will differ by organization, but at a minimum, I recommend adopting the following 3 goals as an initial framework. Firstly, understandable data. So for data to be understood across your organization, it needs to be structured in such a way that it can be used effectively. And this goal goes hand in hand with your data schema that we just discussed, where a data dictionary has a taxonomy that has context and meaning to others who use it. And as I stressed before, it needs to be well documented. The next goal is compliant data. So data and privacy compliance is a vast topic, and we're not going to get into that today. But at a minimum, you need to ensure that you're complying to applicable data privacy and protection laws. And so while these data protection regulations all vary, they all share the same common aim, which is to give individuals control over their personal data, while also requiring organizations to establish a legal basis for processing such data. And the legal bases for processing data will vary by the protection regulation. But one common basis that they all share is consent. And consent is always required for marketing. Additionally, I would say that it's important to document the data lineage to reveal the entire data lifecycle and flow from the source to consumption. So, which includes all the transformations that the data went along the way, and how that data was transformed, what was changed and why. So it could be maybe we've got a subscriber, maybe goes to a landing page and perhaps opts in, clicks a checkbox. You need to be identifying, well, what did they actually consent to? What were the terms on that page, at the time when they visited the page? Because obviously privacy terms can change. And finally, trusted data. So data governance is a trust-based process. And if data can't be trusted, then it's really a source of risk. And worse still, it can be useless, as it can result in wrong business decisions and compromise customer relationships by targeting them with irrelevant or wrong content. Now, data trust needs to be earned, not just taken as a leap of faith. In order to trust your organization's data, you need to prove that it can produce reliable analytics to support well-informed business decisions. Trusted data maximizes your ability to create value from it. So to build trust, you need to firstly begin by validating that your data is accurate and complete for every single data store. Let me think of an example. So, if you're storing e-commerce website activity for customers, you need to be asking yourself questions like, are all your page visits and actions correctly captured? And perhaps, do product page visits correlate to active products in a products data extension? Also, is this data complete? If you're expecting certain fields in the data extension should have a value, then perhaps create an automation to query that data extension, then use a validation activity to report on any exceptions and kind of monitor, or kind of a QA, I guess, in production environment. The final principle I'd like to discuss today is security. So data security is all about keeping sensitive and confidential data secure, yet accessible to those who need it. So some Marketing Cloud customers assume that actually security is not a problem, right? Because platforms hosted in a highly secure ISO 27001 environment. And this is true, but there's still plenty of opportunity for your data to be compromised in the platform. Remember that cybercrime is the fastest growing crime globally, which increases every single year in size and sophistication and cost. And so while cybercrime takes on many different forms, unauthorized data access or a data breach is a common method of obtaining personally identifiable information, or PII. And this data can be further used for identity theft, which comes in lots of different flavors, or holding organizations to ransom, where an attacker demands payment, typically Bitcoin, and threatens to publish the stolen data, typically on a website, if payment is not received. So the following best practices will help mitigate cybercrime and security risks. So the first is user access reviews. Now, Marketing Cloud users and organizations should periodically verify that only legitimate users have access to the platform. So when staff or perhaps contractors are offboarded and leave an organization, their Marketing Cloud access can often be overlooked. And as a result, they may continue to have access to the platform, which would allow them to export this data or behave in a malicious manner. And I've seen many examples of this, auditing clients' accounts and seeing users, and when I go and check on LinkedIn, it's a tool I use, and see that, oh, actually, they left your company 2 years ago, yet they still have access. So I'd recommend reviewing user access every 30 days and revoking access for staff and contractors who have left or no longer require access. And from the user page here, you can actually filter these columns by last login. So you can see who hasn't logged in the last 30 days. And I recommend just to go through all the enabled users on a monthly basis and just check that they should all have access to the platform. And if you're like me, not disciplined about doing this, you can actually, as I've done, written an automation, which actually goes and uses a script activity to get all active, you retrieve all active users, and then send them in an email and how long they've been inactive for. So an administrator can just validate this at a glance when they're getting through their email inbox. The next security principle is a principle of least privilege, or POLP. So this refers to the practice of enforcing the minimal level of user permissions that allows the user to perform his or her or their role. Assigning a broad permission scope to users could result in users unintentionally or intentionally performing malicious activities like deleting data extensions, just a single click. Oops, I didn't mean to do that. Additionally, assigning users with administrative privileges also enables them not only to create user accounts, but also to access OAuth credentials in install packages or API credentials. And this in turn can be used to perform activities like retrieving data, even after their account is disabled. So let's say I've had access to this client ID and client secret through an install package. If I have a copy of that, and even if my employment is terminated and I don't have access, I can still use these credentials as a backdoor and depending on the scope, really do anything, go and create new user accounts and retrieve data and much more. So Marketing Cloud, as we see here, offers a highly granular permission set and allows custom user roles to be created. So you should be assigning or creating roles that tightly align with responsibilities. So users can only access specific applications and features they need to perform their work. The next security principle is file transfer. Now, all Marketing Cloud editions include an SFTP account, or also known as enhanced FTP, where you can import data files into or maybe export your data from. And SFTP is widely regarded today as a de facto protocol for secure file transfer. Now, Marketing Cloud offers a number of different authentication options when creating SFTP user accounts. You can choose from password, SSH key, or a combination of them. So while these authentication options are secure, they ultimately rely on users to follow best practices. Key-based authentication is stronger than passwords. So without diving into a technical explanation, it's possible to guess passwords, but you can't guess a key. However, strong passwords can effectively minimize the risk. Additionally, you should change passwords every 90 days or less. So please don't go and check the FTP users are excluded from password expiration. Marketing Cloud actually has a good email reminder flow, which will send administrators an email prior to an FTP user password expiration, reminding them to go in and change it. And these refresh rules also apply to SSH keys. So only designated users should be able to access keys, and it's important to enforce diligent key rotation, while also disallowing the use of matching passphrases across multiple keys or iterations. Now, deciding on the best authentication option isn't that straightforward. Both passwords and SSH keys have their own advantages and disadvantages. However, when possible, it's recommended you adopt both SSH key and password authentication. So the main justification is that if your private key is compromised, like your device is stolen with malware on it, then the attacker won't be able to compromise the SFTP account without the password. Similarly, if your password's compromised, then they'll still need your SSH key. Look, this isn't foolproof, but it does make this dual factor authentication harder for an attacker to compromise your credentials. Also, I want to touch on file encryption. So when moving files to and from Marketing Cloud by SFTP, you should also consider encrypting your files using PGP. So you might assume that actually SFTP uses an SSH channel, it replaces the need for PGP, but it doesn't. SFTP and PGP have two different goals. PGP encrypts the data payload, while SFTP encrypts the file transfer. So at a minimum, you need transport encryption. On top of that, data encryption is only going to help. Marketing Cloud supports importing and exporting both PGP and GPG files. These two file formats are almost identical. The major difference is between how they're licensed to the public. And both PGP and GPG encryption protects your data at rest, which basically ensures that your data file is not exposed after it's transferred to an SFTP server or file system. And finally, just a few words then on encryption at rest. So certain regulations and enterprise organization policies require data to be encrypted at rest. So this type of encryption prevents attackers from accessing unencrypted data. So if an attacker obtains a hard drive with encrypted data, like they break into the data center, but they don't have the encryption keys, then the attacker is unable to read the data. And encryption at rest is available as an optional feature in Marketing Cloud, either as a dedicated database, that is only for your tenant, or on a shared database, that is with other tenants or Marketing Cloud users. And also I'll note that this moved to Hyperforce, and we saw the first Hyperforce customer last year on AWS from India. You actually get encryption at rest out of the box by default, so you don't need to pay extra for this option. So in closing, I want to just summarize in, I guess, 2 sentences. So data architecture can help ensure that your data is secure, accessible, available, and can be trusted. And following this, these 6 principles that I've discussed today early in your data architecture process will help avoid significant issues in the future. Secondly, good data architecture requires careful planning, collaboration, validation, and extensive documentation to ensure that it's effective. But this comes at a cost. But if you think, as I explained to customers, if you think good architecture is expensive, then you should try bad architecture. Well, I hope you found this session informative. We're going to open, let's just jump into the next part of our session today, and that's our panel discussion. So I'm going to go and stop share and ask for our panelists to come to turn their cameras on. So, and while they're doing that, hey guys, and you can come off mute. So I'm going to start with some questions for our panelists today. You can see that background's changed. It's 6:39 in the morning now in Australia. And if you look hard enough, and this is no joke, you might see some kangaroos in the garden. But keep a look out for those. So I've got some initial questions for our panelists today. Let me just go and grab the first one. So I prepared these questions based on real world scenarios. And these are typical architectural patterns that I see actually quite frequently. And the first being Journey Builder used as an ETL tool, or extract, transform, and load tool. So I've seen many users actually have a business requirement where they need to bulk create or update records in Salesforce, that is Sales Cloud, from Marketing Cloud. And synchronized data extensions, obviously the main name is misleading. It doesn't synchronize the data, it's essentially read only. It will synchronize the fields, but the typical solution is to create a journey with Salesforce activities, similar to this canvas. Let me just actually flick this up just so we can all check we're all on the same page. Go and click on here, click on here, click on here. I'm sure our panelists know what I'm referring to. So they typically create something that looks like this, where you can see we're actually haven't got any send email activities. And you can see kind of a considerable number of records have flowed through from this data extension. And if it finds a contact, if they exist in synchronized data extensions, then it's going to update that contact. Otherwise, it will go and create a lead. And this is, I get kind of a simple version. But going back to our panelists, are there any considerations or issues with this approach of using Journey Builder as an ETL tool? And if so, what alternatives are available to bulk upsert records from Marketing Cloud to Sales Cloud? Does anyone want to take that question or thoughts on it? Maybe Pato. Okay, go on. Adam, sorry, go for it.
I don't really have an answer, but I've seen it a lot, and really the alternative is has its own drawbacks, which is writing a script activity that wraps around AMP script to do the Salesforce functions. But it's there's not a good way to do it, in my opinion. Yeah. And that's why things like that occur, because the information that you get back from an integrated account, or the methods that you have to get data back into CRM from an integrated account, are pretty limited.
Right. Yeah. Pato, have you got anything to add?
Yeah, I can think of like performance. Just those underlying activities don't use a bulk Salesforce API, so I assume performance is going to be an issue. I don't know what happens if you have any validation rules in the objects. Like, I feel like your journey goes into like that content goes into a void, and you don't know what really happened if it got updated or not. I don't know how you control that, so I will probably opt do a couple of things, I will do, like Adam was saying, server-side JavaScript activity, but using the bulk API, you know, it's not even like the AmpScript function, but the bulk Salesforce API, or like just to extract encrypted data and use maybe like that dataloader.io or MuleSoft, you know, if it's more enterprise scale that you're looking for, and integrate data back that way, you know.
Okay. Thank you.
There's
Mateusz,
also,
anything to add, or sorry?
One other thing, I'm sorry. You know, there are scenarios where record locking is a problem too in the interaction, and I think I would caution about that as well. I mean, I try to avoid doing that kind of stuff, but I think that there are some considerations in resource contention.
Yeah, you're right. There's this notion of object record locking, which, depending on the object, determines whether it has a low or high level of contention. I think is it tasks or events have the highest, but what actually happens when you go and update a record, it locks the entire. Sorry, when you update a record, it locks the entire object from being modified to enforce referential integrity. And you know, when you've got multiple processes doing this at kind of at bulk, then it can, things can start failing. And I'll talk about that shortly in my next question. But before I do, Mateusz, have you got anything to add there, or?
Not much, because actually I think Pato mentioned what I wanted to say, because the object locking is one thing. The limitation of the governor limits in the Salesforce is the second thing. Both create quite a lot of problems if you have really bulk data, and you can easily hit the timeouts, you can hit the silent errors. So not only you might not put the data there, you might not know which data was added and which was not added, which creates yet another issue on top of just failing process. So yeah, definitely either I would go bulk API or some kind of ETL third-party solution, whether it will be MuleSoft or data loader. It's more about the pricing architecture of the whole structure. But yeah, Journey Builder is no-go unless it's a very small volume of data from my side.
Great. Yeah, no, I'm definitely in agreement with you there. If you do have a requirement to actually use the bulk API from Marketing Cloud, head over to Shibu Abraham's blog, tidbitsforyou.com, and he's actually got built this using server-side JavaScript, which I found is a useful template. I've gone and modified this further for my use, but I can check that out. So I'm going to ask kind of one more question, and then I really want to open up for discussion, accept questions from our audience. I can see we've got plenty coming in. So let me go and just ask one, and maybe I'm going to actually ask Adam this as a resident AmpScript, self-confessed AmpScript nerd, I think. And that's all about retrieving data at send time. So I've seen this many times. Some Marketing Cloud users want to go and retrieve subscriber data at email send time using AmpScript. And you can do this by using HTTP functions to, validate maybe a subscription status or retrieve customer data from a different API, or and also retrieving data from Salesforce in real time using retrieve Salesforce object AmpScript function. And also we can create and update records in Sales Cloud at send time. So Adam, are there any kind of considerations or issues with retrieving this data and upserting it in this fashion, be it upserting maybe data extensions or directly back to Sales Cloud when sending bulk emails?
Yeah, I mean, well, it's obviously it's possible, but should you do it? Probably not. Just the performance alone should be a deterrent on that. But it's what you were talking about earlier in terms of data architecture. It kind of it kind of is a when you're considering something like that, I question your architecture, and it kind of realizing that some of that, do you really need that data right then? If you don't have it right now, why not? Is the question I would ask, because a lot of that, a lot of the immediacy of data is that needs to be questioned, for the sake of scale and for the sake of performance of your messaging and the the future growth of your operation in the platform, that you should be doing all of that heavy lifting prior to needing that. And there's all kinds of tricks to do all of those things, sure, but is it a good practice? I'd say no.
Okay, I've been inclined to agree with you there.
Prep as much of that data as possible.
Well, I remember I had a client who said, well, we're sending 1 million emails. I'm actually retrieving all of their customer data in real time using retrieve Salesforce object functions, and 338 emails have been sent today so far. And we've done some calculations, and it's going to take another 1.5 years for this email to send. So retrieve Salesforce object function is notoriously slow. And I've also seen kind of record lock and contention. I think where I think. So one of the things I've learned in Marketing Cloud is Adam reminded me of this back in 2019. I think one of his lessons learned was you learn Marketing Cloud by making mistakes. The biggest mistakes you make, the more you learn, and that's certainly true. And one of the ones I made was I've used that many times. One of the things I learned was I had a client requirement that when an email is sent, they wanted to update the campaign member object status to sent or something. And so we tested and all worked fine. And so we sent the email to 10,000 members, and it worked for the first 135, and then the send failed. And it failed because of object record locking intention, because you've got multiple slot workers processing these messages of in batches of 500, all trying to update the same object, and it just fell over. So I don't want to kind of monopolize this any further. We've got a number of questions. Let me go and pose this question, and feel free to take up your hand. I'll just try and paraphrase it. So we've got a brand new Marketing Cloud org. It hasn't got Marketing Cloud Connect at all. They're using 3 publication lists. Do you recommend importing unsubscribes from the old system into publication lists with their unsubscribe status? Or what's the best way, I guess, when re-platforming from a different platform to make sure unsubscribes from a previous system, perhaps even with a different subscriber key, are honored?
Yeah, sure. So I think I can pick it up because I was doing it quite recently on previous project. So the first part of the answer from my side is, yes, you have to bring the old unsubscribes, because this is about the compliance and security. So you need to be able to unsubscribe people that remove their consent for communication. Whether those should be applied to the publication list that you created is a bit more dependent on how it was structured in the old system. Because, for example, if in the old system you just had one unsubscription place, not specific to each publication list, it will be much easier to just put it into the all subscribers list as unsubscribe, and don't have to worry about quite dirty loading to the publication list, because they are not that friendly in terms of updating the status from external source. But this is dependent. It's dependent on how the unsubscribes were captured and assigned in the original system.
Okay, thanks, Mateusz. Anyone else want to add on that? I will. I'd like to say for re-platforming, I actually see auto suppression lists as a very convenient way to do this, because it's based on email address. So if you're moving over to Salesforce and leads and contact IDs, then you're most likely going to be using a different subscriber key. As its name implies, it automatically suppresses them. So it's a great way to manage unsubscribes and ensure that they don't receive the email In fact, I'd argue that order suppression is probably designed for that.
It also has one additional very cool thing, as the name suggests. It is data extension, so you can target it with the SQL queries, which makes it much, much more performant than publication lists. So if you have a lot of data that you want to move, auto suppressions lists are perfect.
Yeah, absolutely. And you can actually, as another top tip, Zuzana Yarchenska put me onto this. You can actually go and create a query to target an auto suppression list. If you create that query in Query Studio from Salesforce Labs on App Exchange, then it enables you to select that the auto suppression list as a target data extension. You can't do it through the UI. You can only do this through. I used to manipulate it for the script activity, but you can do this declaratively through Query Studio. So I'm going to ask for maybe to skip to a shorter question here. I think of another issue of using Journey Builder to add records to Salesforce. Comes with 2 keys. The record now has its original subscriber key plus a new one. It's more of a comment, I think, a comment. And let me actually skip to this one. Some comments here. How about this one? Have you considered doing an architecture? Says it's another comment.
What about the first one? I have many journeys. Or
I missed one.
center
Oh, I have
journey.
many journeys. Thank you. Yes. Yeah, I missed that one. Sorry. I have many journeys where contacts enter the journey after daily SQL ran. After daily ran SQL activity automation, and the SQL is set to update. And seen an org with similar journeys run the SQL automation, but the queries are set to overwrite. So every day it picks up new contacts that were created yesterday and overwrites the DE. It doesn't seem right to me, especially when there are decision splits within the journey data down the line. What do you think of this? Yeah, I've actually seen this quite commonly where you're overwriting the data each time. And so what you normally, if you're appending data to it, you've got what's called a high watermark, where when the contacts are next evaluated to be admitted in the journey, it will only insert the most recent records. But what if you're overwriting this, and how does that impact journey data and contacts moving through it, and maybe even any personalization if this data is blown away? Will the emails, can you use kind of attribute value personalization, and how decision splits with journey data going to be evaluated? Has anyone got the answer to that? Sorry, I actually just got a dog that's done. While you're answering that, I'll just open the door for a dog.
I know like journey data will be like a snapshot of your data, right? So even if you're overriding your entry that extension, I mean, if you are using journey data on your decision splits, you should be okay. But I know there are performance implications in your journey if you are like overriding the data every time for entry stores versus, just adding and evaluating new records as they come in,
Yeah, but my experience is, so I tested this, and from memory, unless it's changed, that so that journey data is actually stored in memory, and think of it as it accompanies the contact as they move through the journey. So so that's okay. If you overwrite it, it's not going to affect it. Additionally, I've actually seen if I have personalization strings or using attribute value to go and personalize it, then it's still personalized with that journey data that's held in memory, even if it doesn't exist. The question I haven't tested, and most likely won't work, is that a viewer's web page link, which is reevaluated each time that the subscriber. So what I've noticed is if you go and send an email, say it's a bulk send, that's all good. Then I clear out or delete the data extension, and if someone clicks viewer's web page, then it doesn't work because it's trying to
reanimate
personalize.
Yeah.
So I think you probably want to go and test that if you're using viewers web page link. I see. Yeah, go on. Adam?
I was going to say, if you as a web page links are getting clicked in your emails, you have a problem with your emails. And I've done a lot of stuff around preserving view as a web page, but never sufficient interrogation of the clicks on it and why people are clicking on view as a web page. I think we probably put too much importance on preserving the animated view of, or the compiled view of the email on a web version.
I agree. I'd say while it was
it
was relevant 10 years ago, but today I know all user agents or email clients can actually open HTML. So yeah, if they're clicking on it, then there's probably something wrong with your email. And you need to be testing it consistently in dark mode and everything. And also it's reevaluated or reinterpreted each time someone clicks on that link. So if we're using a different data extension to look up their loyalty points balance or display offers based on their kind of membership status, that can change over time. And so the email they receive might have different content to when they click as view as web page. We've got a question. I think time for one more question. Is there any way you can disable clear data function for DEs in Email Studio? I think can we turn that off just in case a user accidentally clicks on the button? Do you know that feature? Or
Not 100%
sure. No, he's saying disable clear data function.
Yeah, I am not 100% if I remember correctly. There is no possibility to just remove the single button. You would rather have to remove few more permissions related to data extensions, which would limit other features. I
think you're right. Yeah, I mean, you can definitely disable import and export, but we need to check the granular permission. So you in permission set, you can expand all and just search for the word clear data. It's a fiddly process. It's kind of very frustrating. A lot of kind of trial and error in working out which options need to be enabled. So take a look at that. One more question maybe, and then we'll wrap up. In closing, if you could have a single shortcoming of Marketing Cloud fixed immediately by Salesforce, what would it be? Just one. Just pick one.
That makes it hard.
Closing.
If you give me the top 10, I might be able to come up with a list, but just one? No. Having had the partner advisory board meeting last week, there's a lot of discussion about that recently. Okay. I don't know.
I would say monitoring. I would say just, I don't know if sure, but like monitoring, like health of data, monitoring like, consumption of super messages, contact consumption, just like overall, like your account health, more reporting on that. I think it's not the number one, but one that comes to mind.
Yeah, I will bring big gun and say API coverage.
Yes, that's exactly what I was going to say. I'm like, fix the APIs.
Yeah,
that's what I would say. And I view that as that's a win-win for everyone. If Salesforce would fix that, they would deepen the ecosystem and integration level across the board, and give people tools to build things themselves and not be reliant on support. It's a real big sweeping thing that could be beneficial to everyone, even though it would probably be costly for Salesforce to implement. But yeah, it's just been abandoned, kind of.
Yeah, I don't know. I'm tossing up. Is it am I going to say the UI and this mix between lighting design system and Fuel UX and the some of the interfaces haven't changed in 20 years in Marketing Cloud, but no, I'd say it's probably I would say scripting languages. I mean, both server-side JavaScript and AmpScript are really designed for a different era. AmpScript, can't support JSON, or well, it can, but there's a that's a different story. Server-side JavaScript is based on ECMAScript 3, and I think there's just being able to support the latest version of ECMAScript would just really open the doors for developers, and this kind of notion of promises, and there's just so much more we could extract, so much more power from the platform. So yeah, I'd love to see scripting support revisited, and maybe kind of through even, and also templating languages by opening up Guy template language with handlebars and moustache, and you can go and register your own block helpers. And but I feel that we're just, particularly writing script activities, is just very, very awkward in that the way records are processed consecutively, that is one after another, not asynchronously. Anyway, that's my 2 cents. So thank you so much for joining the session today. So great to see the massive turnout, and thank you for our value panelists today. I feel yeah, very privileged to be in the room with these great minds and noted subject matter experts. We will be posting a copy of this presentation, which is being recorded, and we'll also be sharing a survey. So we'd love to get your feedback, and if you have any thoughts about future sessions that you'd like to hear from us and our panelists, please feel free to reach out and let us know. But thanks once again for joining today, and enjoy the rest of your day or evening. Goodbye.